I have several pediatrician friends who say, Gretchen, no, they don't teach us about child development like that. They don't teach us about skill building. They don't teach us about, how do we get kids to have emotional regulation. Their job, they're trained to save lives,
right?
To nurture the health and well-being of your children.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, the podcast for conscious parents, caregivers, and educators who believe tantrums aren't terrible. They are powerful opportunities for connection, growth, and learning during the first 5 years. You'll explore how to use intentional language to raise calm, confident, and deeply connected kids, because the way we talk to kids becomes how they see themselves and engage with the world. Hi, I'm your host, Cara Terrell, classroom teacher turned parent educator and teacher trainer. Are you ready to nurture your children's mind, body, and spirit? Welcome, Toddler Tribe. Let's transform the toddler years together. Welcome back, Toddler Tribe. Today's guest is Gretchen Camp, and she's from the company called The Thriving Toddler. Doesn't that sound like something we want in our lives? She has this mission that is deeply rooted in the fact that toddlerhood is misunderstood, and that instead of correcting behaviors, we need to be teaching skills that help our kids navigate life. Sound familiar? So excited to have her here today. She's actually going to join us for 2 episodes. And in this first episode, we're going to talk about the culture of parenting these days and how it can be so challenging to be intentional around your parenting choices in the world that we currently live in. So tap into this and really get ready to do some thinking about your parenting why. Welcome back to the show, everybody. I am so excited to be back in the studio interviewing new guests and new experts so that we can share all the toddler goodness with you. Today, I have Gretchen Camp here with me. Thank you so much, Gretchen.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk toddler stuff with you.
Oh, toddler talk. My favorite.
Yes, toddler. Yeah, same. I love it.
Wow. So you and I actually have very similar kind of parallel journeys in this world. I will let you, in your own words, share, what the world of toddlers has meant to you and how it's brought you here.
I started out just kind of not knowing what I wanted to do back in the day. My parents were like, you're going to college. And I'm like, okay. And so I landed in education and I started teaching first grade, and I had a love for teaching. And then fast forward a number of years, I landed in early childhood education, and I started teaching with our state grant preschool program in Iowa. And I taught early childhood. I taught pre-K and K for a number of years. And it was interesting because I didn't know how much I would fall in love with the littles. And that's just how I ended up. I ended up teaching pre-K, and it was magic, and I loved it. And I did it for about 15 years with the school district. And it was one of those things where you don't realize how much of an impact you're going to make until you start doing it. And then it became the connection with the families. And that's just where my love came for empowering parents, really.
So I love that is kind of that gateway for you, because when I walked into my first classroom, felt very strongly, okay, I'm ready. Like, I know how to write a lesson plan, even a little itty bitty baby one. Like, I know how to do this, and I'm ready to teach. And I learned 2 things very quickly. 1, those kids were not ready to learn from me. They needed me to show up and build a relationship with them before there was any learning involved. And 2, I was there to teach the parents as much as I was there to teach the kids.
Yes. That's so true. We think that we're just going to go in and we're going to start teaching because that's what they teach us in college. We've got these lesson plans and it looks so great. Well, you can throw that out the window because it's just about getting down to their level and connecting with them and, letting them know that you love them. And it's that whole connection and safety piece for weeks before you even really start thinking about, I got to teach the academics.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to explore with you is this idea of teachers as an extension of the nuclear family. How did that, I'm sure very quickly on, you realized that was an essential role that we had that nobody taught us was going to be the case.
Right.
And how did you lean into that? And with the families who, with the sub families that come in and say, hey, we are noticing this and this, those are the families who are ready to hear it, ready to work with you, ready to learn. What about the families who didn't really know what they didn't know? And it was a real challenge at home and you were seeing it reflected at school.
Well, I love that you said they didn't know what they didn't know. I would say it's interesting because my career is kind of divided into two parts. I started in first grade and I was not a parent. I was young. I was fresh out of college. I was teaching first grade and I was like, well, I'm the teacher. I know what I'm doing. And you very quickly realize that, hold on, like it's a different lens. There's not just you. It's also your families. And then when I was in early childhood, I say early childhood, I mean more of preschool.
Yeah.
At that, when I was teaching those kids, I was a mom. And it's a very different lens because now I had kids that were in school and I wanted to be in the classroom and I wanted to know what was going on and how could I help. But I also had that teacher lens as well as the mom lens. So being in the classroom with my 4-year-olds and having those parents from all different backgrounds, all different cultures, different lenses, different paradigms that they come from, I was able to really understand that it's not just me and it's not just the kids. And so I often like to say that we're balancing on a 3-legged stool. And it's always the students, it's always the teacher or the professional, and then we have the parents. And I believe that the parent leg is often very wobbly. And that's why the balance of the stool just isn't there, because we have so much training for teachers and we have so much information and supports and curriculum for the children. And it's often our parents who are kind of like, well, what about me? And so we toss them a random handout. And there's parents that are in your classroom and they're the ones that show up the first day and they're emailing you and they want to be involved. And then, like you said, there's the parents that just don't know. And so it's baby steps and it's holding their hand and it's loving them. And it's, hey, have you thought about or did you know? And just by planting those seeds, they start to warm up and start to think like, okay, yeah, so tell me more.
Exactly. They're looking for a partner as well.
Absolutely.
And,
yes.
Especially with so many single parents or, kids that are moving back and forth between homes. They're looking for partners to support their kids' learning. So this is really interesting. We're going to talk today about the culture of parenting. You and I have both lived through a few generations, right? We were raised by a certain decade culture. We had children during some different parenting movement. And now I think we are in the midst of another massive mindset shift. So it's very challenging to put the words right or wrong. This is very subjective, but at the same time, where do you see these culture shifts and these identities that parents are attaching to themselves, right? I am a conscious parent. I am a helicopter parent. I am a gentle parent. How is that actually kind of taking away from their parenting?
They're losing their intuition. My biggest, I think, aha, and now that I'm watching my daughter parent, it's so interesting how, yes, is it helpful to have gentle parenting or conscious discipline or these different awarenesses about parenting? Absolutely. I feel that at the core, we're losing our basic intuition as mothers. And it's so quick to just turn on social media and Google, what do I do? Instead of just pausing and just thinking, hey, like, what does my child need right now? Do they need some connection? Do they need a hug? Do they need some love? Do they need some fresh air? I think that's the basic. It's so easy to get caught in those dopamine hits of, okay, let me do this. Let me do this. And we forget, like, we just at our core, we know we're mothers. We have that in there. And I think it gets masked a little bit.
Wow. That is so spot on. And I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that in choosing a parenting identity, we're losing our intuition.
Absolutely. We're pinching ourselves off. Knowledge is great. Knowledge is potential power. It's what you do with it that can perhaps lead to power. And so I think that when we begin to identify with just one thing, we pinch off all of the goodness and all of the other things that are out there, because a lot of them they're tools that can work and can be helpful. But at our core, we have to just step back and remember that we know we have that voice in our heart that tells us. We just have sort of muted it out because, I mean, let's be honest, Cara, our culture is just so busy.
Yeah.
We're so wrapped up. And I get it, like, I mean, we can go down the whole rabbit hole of economy and things like that and trying to keep our heads above water. But at our basic, we need nurturing and love and safety.
Yes.
And we can give that. We don't need any tips or hacks or tricks or scripts to do that. We know that in our heart.
Yeah, I feel for these parents. I really do, because they're inundated with a more-based society in a way that we weren't.
No, we didn't have that.
And I get why picking a lane feels good. Because if you say all the options are my options, there's just too many options and it's too much information. And one of the things that you and I share a core belief on, I hear you say the word core constantly, and I love that. We are core for parenting over here.
Yes.
Is that raising children should be a child-led experience. And that means that you have taken the time, therefore created the space to observe who your children are. That is the guide for you, right? I just got off a coaching session with a mom who has twins, and how she shows up for each of them is very different because they're very different children. And her energy has to match one's need versus the other's need for independence. And so she's shifting a lot, and it's a lot of work, but she's not using any out tools to do it. She's just assessing. What's up with my kid right now? Is it emotional safety they need? Great, let's meet that need. Is it an independent skill they're building? Cool, let's make that happen. And you're right. Parents don't have a lot of education around how to do that.
Well, there's just not, like, let's be, like, where do you go?
Right.
So you go to your pediatrician, and I have several pediatrician friends who say, Gretchen, no, they don't teach us about child development like that. They don't teach us about skill building. They don't teach us about, how do we get kids to have emotional regulation. Their job, they're trained to save lives,
right?
To nurture the health and well-being of your children. Okay. So where do you go? Who do you go to? You typically don't have anyone until there's an issue, and then you're going down all of these different, getting on waiting lists. And, we have mile-long wait lists for SLPs or OTs or PTs or whatever types of therapies. And so I just keep saying, we need a program that is basic parenting that people can be trained in, following your intuition and knowing about how to teach emotional regulation. That's one of the biggest questions I get from parents is, I wasn't raised, Gretchen. My parents didn't raise me with emotional regulation. They didn't know how to do it. And now I don't know how to do it. And I need help. And I think if you step back and look at our culture, we are dysregulated adults raising dysregulated children. And that cycle, that systemic cycle has to change.
Absolutely.
That can be a whole other episode.
Okay, Toddler Tribe, I'm going to get you back to this episode in just a minute because my guests are awesome, aren't they? Just love it. But first, I have a question for you. Do you know the difference between conscious discipline and collaborative discipline? I have a 4 C's of collaborative discipline model, and I would love for you to grab it. It's totally a free resource. Just hit the download button in the show notes, and you'll get a graphic that you can print that walks you through the 4 steps of working with your little people, connecting and communicating, collaborating, and then compromising. Grab it today and get started shunning all of those pesky power struggles and working with your little people to create collaborative solutions instead.
So, I've been doing a lot of research around this and a lot of thinking about exactly what you just said. That cycles need to break and be redefined. The how is the hard part.
Yeah.
What have you noticed in your work with parents and, just the littles in general about their post-COVID selves? Have you noticed that kids and parents have been able to recapture any type of grounded version of themselves, or is everybody still kind of in reactive survival mode?
My experience is that it's still very reactive and it's survival, and there's just a lot of fear.
Yes.
And so it's easier to, fear feels safe. When you were talking about picking a lane, we pick a lane because it feels safe.
Yeah.
And if we just kind of look over the other way, we're like, whoa, I don't know about that. And then, it does all that to our nervous system and our bodies feel dysregulated. So I think there's always that looming, like, what if this happens again? Like, I just want to make sure maybe I don't know what to do. And so we live in this heightened state of kind of being afraid. And I see it in terms of like, a lot of children, it's happening on accident, but it's just learned helplessness. It's just that fear of like, well, let me just do it for you. I'm just going to do it for you. So what we do is we take away their self-efficacy. We take away their ability to like stand up and be like, well, no, hold on, I can do this by myself. And as you know, that's learned and wired into the brain at a very young age. So I think we are still seeing the effects of COVID 5 years out.
Yeah. And as an educator, I feel like the education epidemic is just beginning. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Our COVID babies are kindergartners now. And here
I think,
go.
And the other piece too is because of that, behaviors in the classroom are just insurmountable. Good teachers are leaving the profession.
Yeah.
Young teachers are leaving the profession because behaviors are out of control, and not because we have bad parents. We're talking loving, kind, good parents, but who just don't know. It's that resource piece that's missing, that education, that you don't know what you don't know piece. That is missing.
This is a complicated culture that we're talking about, because the other thing that I'm witnessing, and I bet you are too, is that parents are having kids a little later, and they're coming to parenthood with some real knowledge behind them and some intentionality about how they want to parent and the type of human they want to raise. And there's this beautiful nature shift going on. And so what are they up against here? Because if the culture is just moving and our society is moving in such kind of a spiral experience, and they're entering saying, I would like to do this calmly and intentionally and purposefully, it feels like people want that. And it also feels like the world's a little bit stacked against them right now.
I love that you said intentionality. That is one of my favorite words with parenting. When parents show up with intention, it changes everything. And I was listening to someone, she was talking about how she's in her mid to late 30s, and she said that her and her husband have spent hours upon hours upon hours debating whether or not they wanted to have children.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting to me was just that I don't know that there's that much intentionality around having children. When do I want to bring kids into this world? It's easy to just have them and then we get them and it's like, well, what do we do now? But to actually to make that intentional decision to not have them. And you're right. I'm seeing a number of, I don't want to say older because 35 isn't old, but in terms of having a baby, I think you're labeled as like a geriatric pregnancy if you're 35. But having that knowledge, you're right. They do. It is kind of like you're butting up against, well, wait a second. The world wants you to do this. This is the culture of parenting. We're just going to manage the moments and we're just going to, we might be adding fuel to the fire because we don't know any better and we're following this script. And then you've got these other parents who are like, wait a second, hold on. That's not how I want to do this. I'm thinking about, a nature school or, doing things differently. And I think that's going to be huge and a really positive shift in our parenting culture.
I agree with you. I mean, I live in Vermont, right? So nature is all around me. Yes. And I did leave for college and I left further for grad school. But when I got married, I knew, okay, I want to return to that home base where it's a lovely space to raise kids. Not everybody has that, but we have access to those things. We can create nature experiences wherever we are. But more than anything, that true nature of coming back to it, that who that child is. I don't know if you caught the first the episode I did with my daughter, but I read to her my personalized parenting mission statement that I wrote when I was pregnant with our first. And it's the value system, it's the characteristics, it's like the North Star guidepost of who I wanted to raise. And it helped me make intentional decisions, hard moments in order to get there. And so intentionality is very important to me. And she'd never heard it before. She didn't know I even wrote it. And so to read this to my 20-year-old and then have her reflect back that she believes she really is all those things was such a special moment.
There had to have been tears. I imagine there had to have been tears and goosebumps. And that's really magical. I love that you did that.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Yeah. And I just really encourage all parents. It's part of my program, actually, is that the first step is we write it or they write it. And I encourage all parents, anyone who's listening, whether you're in a partnership, that you feel like you can echo each other's vision or not. Just sit down and write yours, because the world will infiltrate you. The world will test your value system. The world will ask you to compromise. The world will make you believe things about what kids can and can't or should or shouldn't do are true, when really, deep down that's not what you want. So you've got to have it anchored. And so that's just the path that we chose. And it's worked really well for me.
Well, it's like you said, it's your North Star. I think we do everything in our life like that. We think about our health like that. We think about our careers like that. We think about where we want to live or what vacations we want to do or take. But do we, as parents, sit down with that intentionality? And I mean, I don't know. I would say probably not as often as we would like to hear that our parents do that. So the fact that you're teaching that is amazing. And you did it. Like you did that with your own family, and to now see it, you kind of look, you had a recipe. You started with your recipe and now you're looking at your finished product. You're like, I didn't do too bad.
Yeah. Just watching them be adults is just such a beautiful gift.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
It's such a gift.
It
Such
is.
a gift.
And, I kind of want to wrap here by saying that personally, I feel like parents have been sold a very rotten bill of goods, right? They are told to be afraid. They are told to worry. They are told to be anxious before their baby even gets here. Watch out for those toddler years. They're going to be terrible, And I read that you said something really similar, and I love it. You said, I believe we've misunderstood the real purpose of toddlerhood.
Yeah, absolutely. It got slapped with fake news. It is not the terrible twos. And then I hear they go into like a three-nager and all this other. I just wish we would stop the labeling, and I wish we would understand what we need to understand is the toddler years are magical. It is such an opportunity for us to wire so many important connections and skills for our little ones. And just, I think, taking off that label of, hey, it's going to be the terrible twos, doesn't that feel like if you can just throw that away and burn it, doesn't that just make your shoulders be like, oh, really? Thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you. Just the ease that I think so many parents are looking for.
Yes, they need a little permission. And, I encourage them to swap it out with another T word. I say they're the teachable twos.
Yes.
Because that's what it's for. And I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about that brain wiring, to talk about this really cool system and this way of visualizing it that you've come up with. Would that work for you?
I would love to. I would love to continue. Yes.
Oh,
thank you.
Fantastic. Well, until then, you all know what to do. My toddler tribe out there, stay mindful and proactive and go write your parenting mission statement. And if you don't know how, send me a message. Until our next episode, as we transform the toddler years.